Okay, now number 6 was the delayed rejection. This is the one that took the longest for me to receive. Now, I've talked about this rejection in conversations I've had on Twitter with other people, and I have gotten something wrong. I previously told people that it took 8 months for this agent to respond, and it sure felt like 8 months. But actually, when it turns out, when I looked at my email, I realized it was actually not as long as I thought it was. It was actually 4 months. So I don't know where I got the 8 months thing from. I kept getting, I guess I got confused with some other agent, but she was definitely the agent that took the longest to respond out of the ones that responded at all, I guess I should say. So maybe I got her mixed up with someone, but I just kept thinking I didn't hear from her until December, but I'd actually heard from her sooner. But anyway, let me just get to what happened. So the very first agent I queried was this agent. And I just really liked her. She just seemed cool. Again, she repped everything that I like to write. So I'm like, okay, I will query her. And what she would do on her Twitter, she was very active on Twitter. And what she would do on her Twitter was she would do this thing called 10 queries. And I've actually seen a lot more agents do this. And it's kind of like what they'll do is they'll take a look at their current inbox and take a look at the current queries that they have and give you the status, like, you know, if they liked it, it's a request. If there was a problem with it, you know, this is what's wrong with it. A lot of times when they get these things, it's like mostly stuff that they don't even rep. So she would do this 10 query things, and I just kind of thought that was cool because I thought, hey, I'm querying. I want to learn how to improve my querying. What can I do to make it better? What kind of things do agents like in a query? And so at first I thought that was really cool. But after a while, I started to not like that she did the 10 query things because I kept wondering, oh God, you know, what if she gets to my query and then she says something about my query on Twitter, and then that would just make me feel really bad. And so then I just kind of started feeling bad for all those people that she talked about. And even though she didn't put any identifying information in there, I'm sure some people may have had an idea that she was talking about their query and rejecting it on Twitter. And that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way after a while. When I started to look at it that way, like, you know, the shoe on the other foot, I didn't like it so much. But I was still waiting for her response. And I waited and I waited and I waited. And she was like really good at giving updates on her query status. And she was like, oh, I've got like 1,000 more queries to go. And I'm like, oh my God, like how many queries does this woman get? And she worked for a big literary agency. So I'm like, okay, well, you know, she's really busy. This is one of the big literary agencies. So she is busy. But I also kind of wondered, like, doesn't she have like an intern helping her or something? Like, what's the deal there? I don't know. Well, it got to a point where I just had not heard from this woman, and I didn't think I was ever going to hear from her. I was starting to think that it was just going to be a no response, and I just pretty much, I gave up on ever hearing from her. And so I went on to Query Tracker, which is where I kept track of all of my queries, and I closed it out. I closed it out as a no response, and I just accepted that I was not going to hear from her. Well, after sometime later, after I had closed out that query, guess who I heard from? I finally heard from her. And of course, it was a form rejection. But I tell you something, you know what kind of made me feel a little, not just the 10 query things, that, yeah, but she was actually in the process of leaving that literary agency, and she was moving to another agency. And so it was kind of like I got the sense that she was wrapping up everything as fast as she could, just as she could move on to this new agency. And so I don't really know if she, like, did she really spend the time looking at my query? You know, I just don't know. But you know what? At that point, I decided I didn't want to work with her after all, because I mean, if she was that busy, I was like, if I was her client, like, would she ever even get to me? You know, she just seemed like super busy and didn't really seem to have a lot of time. And I was like, well, maybe this is for the best. Maybe I don't want to work with her after all. So, but yeah, that rejection, for some reason, I just thought it lasted like 8 months, because it really felt like it was a long, long time before I heard from her. And no, it wasn't that long, but it still was a long time, but it wasn't as long as I thought. So